Brown envelopes, kickbacks, bribery, or backhanders. Call it what you want. But there is little doubt that corruption is a big problem in modern-day Russia. The latest report from Transparency International, which produces an annual index on corruption, demonstrates this once again. Out of the 183 countries measured, Russia comes towards the bottom in 143rd place, alongside the likes of Nigeria, Mauritania and Togo. That ranking makes it the worst place for public sector graft in all of the world's major economies. But there is a glimmer of hope. This year's scale shows a slight improvement on Russia's performance against last year, when it came 154th out of the 178 countries monitored. According to Elena Panfilova, who heads Transparency in Russia, this is because corruption is finally being taken seriously in Moscow.
Oh, yeah, definitely there is a little bit of good news, and to some extent, if we look in the perspective, it's probably some kind of signal of bigger news in the future, because what's been done, and we have to credit President Medvedev with that, in the last 3 years, a comprehensive legislation against corruption was adopted in the country. It is very new. It's not yet working properly, but we have everything we need to fight corruption in the book of law now.
The Transparency Index doesn't measure corruption itself. That would be impossible because graft, by its nature, is underground. Instead, it measures perceptions of corruption, for example by surveying business people. The Berlin-based group describes corruption in Russia as a systemic problem. At one end of the scale, ordinary citizens are forced to hand over bribes to police. At the other end of the scale, businesses give officials multi-million ruble kickbacks for licenses and permits. Procurement graft in public sector spending projects on its own costs the taxpayer 1 trillion rubles a year, Transparency says. While Russia has cleaned up its act a little, Panfilova says it will have to go a lot further in the future.
First of all, we definitely advocate for implementation of all that complex of legislation, because sometimes we see norms which are not being controlled, which are there, but nobody is, for example, properly controlling the same declaration of income and assets. Second major part still missing in our legislation is a system of whistleblower protection. And we do see people reporting on corruption becoming victims of retaliation and oppression from those about whom they report. And the third part of everything we advocate of our advocacy company relates to the more efficient public control mechanisms, because civil society is ready and trying to perform public control against corruption, and a lot is being done, but unfortunately public officials and those who should respond to that public control don't respond that often, and we do want to see that happening.
Foreign investors consistently name corruption as one of the most serious barriers to doing business in Russia. In 2009, the Swedish furniture retailer IKEA said it was halting further expansion there because of the unpredictable character of administrative procedures in some regions. Although IKEA would not comment on its recent experiences with corruption in Russia, a spokesman said they are currently expanding there. They have opened 2 outlets already this year and have plans for 3 further standalone stores in Moscow. In a written statement, the retailer said it has a positive attitude towards doing business in Russia.
We are optimistic about the future in Russia. Russia is an important market for the IKEA group, and we have long-term commitment and strategic interest in this market. We strongly believe that doing honest business is a key factor for the success of IKEA.
According to the index, New Zealand has the cleanest public sector in the world, followed by Denmark and Finland. At the bottom end of the scale are the hermit nations of North Korea and Myanmar, as well as lawless Somalia. Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria and Yemen, the countries of the Arab Spring, all fare relatively poorly on the corruption scale. Nepotism, bribery and patronage were ingrained into political systems that were rejected in a mass protest movement, Transparency says. But people power and fighting corruption go hand in hand, the group says. The point is simple. The more accountable a government is, the better it will be at protecting its citizens from officials who use their power to line their pockets.